Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Di Carlo. This is the voice of the Coastal Bend. We've been doing this show about 10 years. Tonight, my guest is Mr. Homer Villarreal, who's had a local newspaper, a community activist. Tonight, we wanted him to come on the show, and I call it jokingly, the Eve of Destruction tour. The city wants to destroy, or the Wrecking Ball tour. They want to basically destroy or tear down Christus Bond Memorial Hospital. They want to destroy two of the three ships of the Columbus fleet, and then the parks, 22 parks. They want to actually destroy those also, and then give them to a developer allegedly with incentives to build reasonably priced housing. So let's start with Christus Bond Memorial Hospital. Mr. Villarreal, thanks for coming on. What's your take on this issue of the destruction of Christus Bond Memorial Hospital?
Quickly, the movements, all of a sudden we hear the Corpus Christi Color Times announce that they weren't aware that a movement was going on by Christy Spahn to tear down the Memorial Hospital, which houses a 360-bed facility, a trauma center, a residency program for doctors, as well as the emergency room training that they do, as well as deal with psychiatric patients, so on and so forth. They said that they sort of forced the executive director, Ms. Pam Robinson, the CEO, currently the new CEO of Spahn Memorial, which is an international Catholic hospital, by the way, that they sort of forced her into announcing a master plan, which they had for tearing down. But this is it has had shocking ripples throughout the community. This massive rock falling on the water, and you're seeing the ripples just violently sending tenebrific thoughts through people's minds. Because here you have a whole ecosystem, and the Color Times was wrong. They lied in reporting that that facility it's just one of the buildings that was built in 1944, and we're talking about just the West Wing, which mostly houses.
The West Wing of Christus Bond Memorial Hospital.
Christus Bond Memorial.
The rest of it is much newer.
The eastern, the East Wing, what we call, was built in the late 60s. Anyway, just to correct that, but to move on. Here you have this huge hospital, a single stop, a second-level trauma center that served the Vice President of the United States when there was a shooting in hunting accident there in Kennedy County. They want to bring this hospital down and reduce it to a speck in the map of Corpus Christi. And something sounds very suspicious, because here you're going to have a whole ecosystem where you have doctors, businessmen, eateries that rotate. You're going to have
excuse me for interrupting you, but that's a side issue, isn't it? The fact that there are restaurants around there, clinics around there, etc. Isn't that the side issue to primarily the main issue, which is Christus Bond Memorial was used to provide indigent care?
Well, the other factor, the thing is that the county, what separates, we zoom in on the funds. What makes Christus Bond Memorial so unique from the other Christus Bond hospitals, it is that it has public dollars. So the incentives of many of these predatory minds, which I'm going to talk about later in the show, the motive is they're going after public funds, because here Memorial is receiving monies from the county every year for upgrading.
Right.
They can go out for bonds. What is the quickest way if people want to go after public funds? It's through a bond election. And they can utilize the county entity to bring in funds and use those
Well, the
monies
county
at will.
say it more simply, the Christus Bond Memorial has a contract with the county, and the county pays Christus Bond Memorial to provide indigent care to people, correct?
Yes. There's a contract, a 1986, I believe, or 96 contract. I think Richard Borchard was the county judge at the time, when the hospital district used to own, control, and maintain the structure of Memorial. They basically turned it over to Spawn
Right,
with
it
the
was called-
conditions
excuse
that
me,
they
excuse me.
would serve the indigent
It was called Memorial
population.
Hospital, and Memorial Hospital provided indigent care to the poor people. And
And the
Christus-
outlying
and the-
areas, Robstown, Driscoll,
And then
Agua Dulce,
Christus
so on and so
Bond
forth.
was given the contract instead in the, whenever that was, 15 years ago or so, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You know,
Now, I
yeah,
would
go
tell
ahead.
you, I did want to put this in, and not meaning to be rude. Under the Texas law, under the Texas Health and Safety Code, section 61.028, every county, I believe it's over 250,000, has to in fact provide indigent care. Now, what's interesting is it's pretty basic services, and the basic services, it just includes things like immunizations, medical screening services, annual physical examinations, etc. But under section 61.029 of the Health and Safety Code, they do not have to provide emergency health care services. They don't have to provide trauma services. So I don't know what your thoughts of this are. Are they going to eliminate Christus Bond Memorial Hospital and just provide the very basic minimums necessary under the 61.028 of the Texas Health and Safety Code? Is that part of the modus operandi? Have you looked at that?
Well, if we look at corporations and in general, when they serve a certain peak, it's about net gain in the end. And we're starting to see here, remember, this is a Catholic hospital, an international hospital that exists all over the world. We're starting to see not your average priest working with a community out in the field, the true believers. We're starting to see the people that control the bank accounts and the money and the power. And I'm trying to look at, I've been studying the power structure of Corpus and Nueces County for 20 years now. Our newspaper has been around for 20 years, believe it or not. I've been engaged in other, of course, activities in the community throughout the years. And basically, we're starting to see the church play an extremely politicized role. The secular aspect of religion. We look at the Christie Spawn Board, for instance. We saw Edmund Carmody,
Well, he was a former
the
bishop.
former
Bishop Carmody.
bishop that said what separates Christie Spawn Memorial from all the other hospitals was compassion, and serving the indigent, the compassion in serving the indigent, the immigrants, the various population groups that have been demonized or distanced by certain groups in society. So you would see all these billboards around Corpus. Now we have a new bishop, Stephen Mulvey, and he said what separates Memorial Spawn is hope. We give hope to a lot of the working people, to a lot of the poor, that we have a support system here, a one-place stop where you get sick, you don't have to go out for medicines, they're right there, a trauma center, a residency center. Now they want to reduce this, and this is basically your question, why would they want to provide only the basic services? Because in the contract, if we look at that 1996 contract where County Judge Borchard made and the commissioners made with the Christie Spawn, it says just to provide indigent care. So the less services to the indigent in the corporate mentality would be higher net gains for the corporation. So but if
Perhaps.
perhaps, but then you're looking right, and you're also talking about destruction, shock and awe. You're talking about transportation of resources from the a level 2 trauma center. It's like
Well,
transport.
one thing you haven't
And
told,
there-
one thing, excuse me, one thing you haven't told the audience about, of course, is they state that they're going to move the trauma center to Christus Bond Shoreline, which, if we point the camera out this window right here, we're at that location. So they want to move the trauma center to Christus Bond Shoreline. Now, a lot
An
of people,
extremely dilapidated hospital, by the way.
well, when the other issue is when was Christus Bond Shoreline built? That's probably, isn't that overall as old as Christus Bond Memorial?
It was built a little bit before the east wing of Memorial, so there's not much different.
But I think they're going to tear. There's ambiguity in the plan because they say that Christus Bond Shoreline, they're going to be tearing down 2 buildings there. So it sounds like they're going to tear down Christus Bond Shoreline also. There's only 3 old buildings.
There is, they don't have the parking. That's one. I'm sure they'll fix it as they go along. It's an enormous project. It's like transporting a factory from the center of Corpus to point B overnight. They're saying it's a point of urgency. They're trying to destroy a 300-bed facility. I spoke to John Heaps yesterday. He's with the hospital district. He's pretty much in their corner. He works for the county. The county gives him the county dollars. He thus provides and deals with his CEO and the Spawn Memorial, Spawn Hospital CEO. And anyway, but right in the center of Spawn, we see a man by the name of L. Jones, who in the last few elections we've seen try to that Operation Bayfront. We saw him at the head of the helm.
Yes, that was a park.
He sits right there on the board with Stephen Theo Claybert from the Claybert Bank, whose father, I think, was a law partner with Hayden Head Sr. We see the co-optation of Dr. Hector P. Garcia's family, like Barbara Canales Black and Patricia, which formerly served at the board. Now I think Barbara, Patricia Canales Bell, I think is her name, married to an attorney, right? She's an attorney herself.
I'm not an expert
Her
on
sister
attorneys.
now is going to
I'm not an
serve.
expert on attorneys, man.
But here you say we have an Hispanic on the board. We have Barbara Canales Black, where Barbara Canales Black has never lived in the West Side. She lives in Hewitt Drive. She was part of a
For people who are watching this stuff, internationally, the west side of Corpus, you're saying, is basically an older part of the town where many Hispanics, Mexican Americans live. Is that what you're saying?
I think
she lives in you're saying that
we're talking about a low-income neighborhood. Sometimes barrios are equated with ghettos, so on and so forth.
I think the technical phrase for ghetto really means place where one certain ethnic group is located.
Yes,
I don't think it necessarily connotes poverty.
But culturally, it does, and in South Texas, it does.
Okay.
I think culturally,
So the West Side. What
like
would you
the
refer to?
barrio wouldn't necessarily.
What do you
mean that
refer to
either.
the West Side? You say this is
basically,
is this a ghetto?
and the
Is this-
West
is this a
Side.
poor area of town. What is it?
Well, basically, in the West Side, you have the highest concentration of poor Hispanics in Nueces County.
And Christus Bond Memorial Hospital.
We're talking about Nueces County, not just
Christus
Corpus
Bond Memorial
Christi.
Hospital has been serving that group. Is that right?
Well, the reason Christi Spawn was given the contract was because Corpus Christi, remember the early days of segregation, even Memorial used to, when they opened in after World War II, used to segregate Hispanics. Hispanics were treated in the hallways, by the way. Dr. Hector P. Garcia was really brought in because many of the German American doctors would not serve the Hispanic community. But that's a side issue.
Dr. Hector P. Garcia, and actually when I
Founder of the
started my
American GI
practice
Forum,
here,
yeah.
he was actually still seeing people at a free clinic on a
Yes.
part-time basis,
Yes.
and that they want to name the new facility that's going to replace Christus Bond Memorial Hospital. They want to rename it the Hector P. Garcia Clinic. So that's pretty good,
Yeah,
huh?
well,
You like that?
can you
just
imagine a whole structure being reduced to a little a dot in the map of Corpus Christi? It sort of deflates. It sort of destroys the psychology of the enormous strides that Hispanics fought for the West Side to elevate when they had been ignored, when they were trying to come out from a dark period of segregation, from a dark period of not having the contracts, trying to humanize the institutions of Corpus Christi. But remember, this is the heartland of Catholicism. 99.9 of these Hispanics were Catholic. So where,
I don't think it's that high.
Where
It's real high, but I don't think
well,
it's quite
well,
that high.
at that point in time, it was.
I would
Historically,
believe that. I would believe that.
historically, what we're starting to see now, and I think there's a great deal of disenchantment with the Catholic Church that is making many Hispanics turn away because we see the religious leader himself, the bishop, hanging around L. Jones, and we're talking basically a political boss in Corpus Christi that controls the public funds. If you control the money, you control the city, you control the world.
But when you say hanging around, what do you mean hanging around?
Well,
Have-
what we're
have
start.
coffee and
What do I mean by hanging
sandwich,
around?
bologna sandwich. What?
Look at the movements. Look at the movements. We see L. Jones and his group trying to develop in a very congested area. We have Whataburger Field. They push for American Bank Center. Remember, he's the president, the CEO of American Bank. Here you have using public funds to build the American Bank Center, Whataburger Field, all their friends, Brewster Street. Then we see Spahn. We see the Spahn Corporation now bringing him an expert at going after public funds. The main guy that is masterminding a lot of this Operation Bayfront, and it's sort of an ecosystem for me. There's a power structure in Corpus Christi, and people have to wake up. The movement that we see Christy Spahn is doing is they want a total monopoly on health care. They want a total monopoly on those dollars that are given for indigent health and to Memorial. They want to move all those resources now, siphon everything out of the heart, the middle, the center, the concentrated area of the West Side into a highly congested area like Shoreline, where they want to place the trauma center. Can you imagine if somebody's bleeding, head trauma, time to treatment is critical. 10 minutes will take your life. This is an act of violence. How can it not be an act of violence to overnight close down a facility where people are barely hanging on to life, where you have thousands, hundreds of people with various very serious illnesses, and just shutting down their basically their oxygen tanks? You know?
Well, and for the people that aren't local who are nice enough to watch the show or interested enough in a certain community to watch the show, Christus Bond Shoreline Hospital is actually on a shoreline, and the access to the hospital is rather limited. In other words, there is no expressway, there is no highway to give you access. Where in Christus Bond Memorial Hospital, it is a lot closer to major arteries to give accessibility, and a lot closer to the middle of even though it's only a mile and a half away, it's a lot closer to the center of the city. It's not at the end of the city like Christus Bond Shoreline, where they want to relocate the facilities for the indigent. Isn't that one of the issues, Homer?
Yes, one of the issues. it is better explained. The fairgrounds in Robstown, which is in the rural areas, many people now are starting to use the Robstown fairgrounds because you can enter from north, south, east, west. But the American Bank Center, the way it's situated, way in a corner, in sort of a very restricted area, the flow of traffic is extremely, so it's like being in Houston, in Dallas.
So the
at
implication
5
is
o'clock noon.
the implication is the American Bank Center, like Christus Pond Shoreline, is being located to those areas.
It is
not
a,
for,
a,
not
da-
for,
a dangerous location. This affects, if it affects the center of Corpus Christi, it affects the south side. It affects the north side. It affects everybody that finds themselves in this turf when they're sick.
Well, and the implication is the American Bank Center and the tearing down of this relies on part of the earlier eve of destruction tour of the city of Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
They actually tore down the Memorial Coliseum.
Yes, and basically what we're starting to see is the consequences of destroying an infrastructure. First of all, to dispel some of the myths.
And that was another structure they decided not to sell. I don't know, maybe there was a legal reason they couldn't sell it. But again, this was another major structure. We're not going to sell it. We're going to tear it down and the implication was not to give competition to the American Bank Center, which there were certain vested interests.
Yeah.
You're stating,
just
correct?
think about it. Why would they tear down a multi-million-dollar facility? I mean, destroy to smithereens. Why wouldn't they leave the memorial's hospital structure in place, as well as the clinic? The little clinic, which, by the way, is not going to be just doctors. Now you're going to have doctors' assistants treating the indigent. They're no longer going to have the residency center there of real doctors serving the poor. It's sort of going to be like the clinic they open in the West Side, the clinic they open in Robstown, where the people don't get their medicines on time, where a doctor only comes in once a week, so why wouldn't they leave the Memorial Hospital structure there and just sell it? And I think that's one point.
Well, it might be that they can't sell it.
Well,
but I thought of something funny. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny they called it Memorial Hospital and Memorial Coliseum? I'm thinking to myself, boy, those aren't the greatest memorials. They're the way they tear them down.
You know, the former CEO Bruce Holstein of Memorial, before Ms. Pam Robinson was brought in, he brought up, we were at Landry's discussing the strategic plan for Memorial, and he hired my marketing company just to provide some input. It was Royal House Marketing, by the way. I'm involved with a marketing firm.
A little plug for Homer's.
That we
little
have.
plug there. I'm just teasing.
Anyway, you know, I do engage in other activities, but you know,
Me too. I'll be cutting the grass
subconsciously, as we were there enjoying the seafood and the nice weather, he said, "You know what? We're talking about Spawn and how the treatment, how the results that they get, that the nurses, the doctors are more acclimated to dealing with the indigent, and how well." When he visited the other sites, he said there seems to be too much social distance between some of the staff and in dealing with street people and poor people and people of different cross-cultural backgrounds. In lip service, he said, "I think if one facility needs to be torn down, it's
Shoreline.
a Shoreline hospital."
Well, that would make more sense. You know why that would make more sense?
He says there's structural. There's structural fatigue. That was the word he used.
Well, they are going to tear it down. I think they are going to tear it down.
Well,
Shoreline.
there is structural fatigue. No, they actually want to build. They want, this is the
Well,
logic.
they're going to tear down two buildings. There's only 3 buildings.
Yes. This is the logic. They want to move the trauma center down there overnight, which is going to cause devastation. This is the thing. They want to open a 200-bed facility along shoreline. I think the exit ramp of 35, somewhere around that area, near American Bank. They're trying to, it's going to be a 200-bed facility. I spoke to Johnny Hibbs of the hospital district yesterday, and he said it's going to cost, they're trying to go out for a bond election, trying to convince the commissioners, and it's for $400 million. And I told him, that, you know, pretty much the guy's going to end up with a contract. Guess who it is? The guy that sits in the hospital board, American Bank. Guess how much the taxpayers are going to pay in interest? It's going to be $800 million. So you're talking about within 20 years. We're talking about $400 million going to L. Jones, the CEO of American Bank. So here you have Christie Spawn and American Bank in bed together. And you're talking about both centered in the same geographical area. We're talking about yesterday the CEO of the hospital district, Johnny Hibbs, he said, got all excited what he was talking about, and he pretty much supports the power structure in their campaign. He's saying it's too old and blah blah blah. Okay. But the one thing he said, I'm right in the middle of medicine. 3 words he used: wealth and power. What do those words tell you, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, let me. That's interesting, and it does tell you a lot. But I wanted to state that it's obvious that if any of the hospitals should be torn down and the property sold, it should be Christie Spawn Shoreline. For the main reason is the property is on shoreline. It's more desirable for. It's more in the city planning structure for tourists and diversity of things. Number 2. And number 3, it's worth a lot more money. The land is worth a lot of money. The land where Christie Spawn Memorial is not worth a lot of money. So that would be the one that should be torn down.
Where would you have a quicker chance of reaching a hospital?
Well, and then obviously
there's people dying before they get to. A lot of people die on their way to.
Well, they have the Halo flight deal. They say that Halo flight. I think they're going to expand the Halo flight.
Well, the main Halo flight is Memorial. They're trying to alter that also, but you're talking about a whole county. Here you're gonna just think of the consequences. So it's like throwing a rock in the water. You see ripples. You don't know what's gonna happen. But if you have an ecosystem that has existed like Memorial Hospital, you have businessmen that their entire life savings, they open businesses there. You have eye doctors, heart surgeons. They have a respiratory clinic, doctors, neurologists that opened the Bonilla Plaza, invested millions. Okay. So you're going to have people losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing their businesses, a whole ecosystem. Remember, what is the logic in any community? You go into the community, do you let an outside expert, an outside corporation tell them, what are your needs? No. The people themselves in a democracy determine what their health issues are, what their needs are in that community. In this case, you don't bring somebody that doesn't know your community, that doesn't know what has emotional weight for your family and the survival.
So the outside expert doesn't know the details on the community. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the knowledge to make intelligent decisions oftentimes.
But we reached a